Good evening and welcome. For those of us who haven't met, I'm Jeremy Martin, Interim Director of Athletics at William & Mary. In planning for this evening, we had anticipated a question and answer format with the Athletics Director. Given the transition of leadership in recent days, tonight I'll say a bit about me to introduce who I am and how I work. I'll describe the process we are engaged in and the timeline. We want to move swiftly, thoroughly, and with broader engagement. In doing so, I'm going to address some of the questions we received, even as we know we have more to do addressing them in future weeks. And then I'll frame the challenges we need to address, challenges that have to be solved for the athletics department as I understand them, because having a shared problem statement is the first step to shared solutions. I'm coming to you this evening from my office in the Brafferton. Being on historic campus affords daily opportunities to walk the Wren Yard and ponder all that it means to be part of William & Mary. I get to see the Wren building and marvel at the generations that have passed through it, to recall more recent classes marching through to cheers at opening convocation, and to remember the serenity of senior candlelight ceremonies and the glow of one more alma mater serenade together. For all the beauty of historic campus, working here provides daily reminders of William & Mary people and the shared values that bind us together. Our students, faculty, staff, alumni, parents, friends, and fans are incredible. And in recent weeks, however, we have not been at our best in how we've interacted with each other. We have to own that as a community. That is not who we are, and it cannot be how we behave toward one another. I understand the pain that people are feeling, yet we need to move forward together as a community in a respectful way. We find ourselves at a moment of conflict, real, meaningful tension over our shared values. Among the most cherished is belonging, that we create a welcoming and caring community, as is flourishing, that we ensure that William & Mary will thrive for all time coming. Underlying both those values is respect, recognizing and upholding each person's inherent dignity and worth. As we consider the actions that impact the sense of belonging and seek to understand the fundamental issues affecting the university's ability to flourish, we must engage with curiosity, championing intellectual agility and inspiring creativity. Although this position is new for me, I've had the honor of serving in a variety of roles during my almost 13 years at William & Mary, including as Associate Provost and most recently Chief of Staff to the President. I'm a double alumnus with an M.B.A. from the Raymond A. Mason School of Business and a Ph.D. from the School of Education, and I've taught a few courses over the years as well. In a former life, I was a college athlete and coach. It was a graduate assistantship in academic support services for athletics that allowed me to earn my doctorate at William & Mary, beginning an ongoing partnership with William & Mary Athletics that continued several ways after I joined the President's office. I've been with you. I've been with you at so many games, so many meets, losing my voice, cheering along with my family, my friends, my colleagues. I've experienced that joy and pride as all of us pull together, willing the team forward. And I've also run the Academy, the semester-long orientation program for student athletes. I've worked with them. I've seen them in study hall. I've seen the commitment it takes to be a Division I athlete at a university of our caliber. When former athletics director Samantha Hughey called to share the news that she would be leaving the university, she asked me to do everything I could to unite William & Mary moving forward. When President Rowe asked me to take on this interim role, my commitment was to do my best for William & Mary. This is a university we care about passionately and that I care about passionately. It's an honor to be of service to William & Mary, and I hope to be able to serve our community well in this moment. Many people I've spoken with say that they recognize the financial challenges the university faces right now are real. We project a $30 to $100 million shortfall for the institution this year, and we're amidst a recession that is going to take many years for the nation to recover from. Athletics faces problems that are long-standing and must now be addressed. As we shift towards thinking about the problem, I'd like to begin by talking about a quote that most of you will have seen from Albert Einstein. And the notion is, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes clarifying the question. For if you know the question, then it won't take more than 5 minutes to solve the problem. I believe that we have to talk about three questions for William & Mary. At the institutional level, we need to talk about and understand institutional identity, who we are as an athletics department. We need to talk about budget stability and the legal requirements that come with any decision around these factors. As I see it, there are two potential athletics identities for William & Mary. The first is Division I. That's scholarship athletics. It's competitive opportunities at the highest level. And there's a higher institutional investment, and along with that comes some expectations along with visibility and branding for the institution. At Division I institutions, club offerings are generally the base point at which the broadest participation for the most students is available. Nationwide, there are 357 institutions. A little less than half enroll more than 10,000 students. There's also Division III, and nationwide there are 442 of those institutions, almost 3/4 of which enroll less than 3,000 students. That's non-scholarship athletics. It's broad participation, and the expenditure in athletics is effectively a financial aid investment. The schools use it either to drive enrollment and the associated tuition dollars, or they use athletics to generate class composition that they want within their enrollment body. There are also club offerings at that level, generally niche sports such as ultimate, as our president would often remind us. William & Mary has always been up front that we are a Division I institution. We have been from the beginning. And we know that that aligns and has stated that that aligns with our vision and mission as a university. So the first question we have to address together is, what solutions align with William & Mary's identity as an NCAA Division I institution? We've long known that there were budget issues in William & Mary athletics. We've been talking about this for at least 45 years. In 1975, we had the decision to excel, and that launched an aggressive fundraising campaign. In 2006, we had the Game Reclaimed, which was an investigation of the academic and athletic balance at William & Mary. And even as a report generated that way and intended to focus on academics and athletics and the balance between the two, that report still called for increased revenue through annual giving and endowment income. In 2015, we published a championship experience for every student, athlete, and fan, which highlighted the need for significant philanthropic investment and resources commensurate with our peers. And in 2018, we published Securing the Future, also known as the Pictor Report, which noted that the time had come to start thinking about aligning resources with strategic priorities, as well as the need for greater investment. In 2015, we described it this way: Tribe athletics is under-resourced to compete in this environment. At the same time, the shifting landscape of intercollegiate athletics presents opportunities for even greater success if we are bold enough and the alumni and friends of Tribe athletics are committed to bringing such a vision to fruition. In 2018, we were more frank. We said openly, the financial model is not sustainable within current or future resources. We noted that competitive success had grown uneven within our programs. And we ultimately stated that William & Mary would have to make decisions on the size and scope of our athletics program. I'd simply note that both of those quotes come from the first 2 pages of those reports. If we look at our conference peers, and I understand that many within our community don't consider the CAA institutions to be the peers we want to compare ourselves to, but nevertheless they are who we compete against. And interestingly enough, if you look at other institutions that we might align with more academically, generally the resource levels at those institutions is higher even than our CAA peers. 2 years ago, William & Mary had the most student-athlete participants in the CAA. In the last 2 years, through roster management, we've seen that number decline by about 10%, and yet we still have the 3rd lowest spending per student athlete. I've heard many say that this is just a proxy to say we need to spend more on football, but the reality is this is a figure that reflects the entire resources of the department. Roughly half of our team athletic budgets fall below the median compared to the CAA peers. And as much as our ethos has been doing more with less, we ultimately reach a point in which we have to consider if we're simply expecting less from less. It's helpful to look at the FY20 budget, what we thought and what actually happened. William & Mary Athletics has essentially 5 main sources of revenue. That's endowments, tribe club giving, operating, NCAA revenues, and university support. There are essentially three main categories of expenses: scholarships, salaries, and operating. And I'd simply note that operating is actually the smallest component of those expenditures. We're fairly effective annually in projecting endowments and university support. We're relatively able to project a stable enrollment, and it's formulaic how you calculate the endowment return in a given year. But you can see in FY20 that we didn't achieve what we expected from Tribe Club giving. We also had a slight variance in operating expenses, and NCAA revenue was down by $500,000 due to the pandemic. The gray box that you see represents the $2.87 million shortfall that we experienced in FY20 that was covered by Tribe Club reserves. Tribe Club reserves, these are not endowment gifts, these are gifts that are given that can be expended over more than 1 year, have been declining steadily since at least FY15. This is what a structural budget deficit looks like, annually having to take reserves to cover an operating deficiency, and they are long-standing. The yellow bars are restricted balances. Those are gifts that are designated to a specific sport for use only in that sport. The green bar, the base, is unrestricted, and I'd simply note that those unrestricted dollars, which are the most flexible and can be used in the most different ways, have been exhausted. As you can see from FY19 to FY20, the decline in these balances accelerated. This is the impact of the pandemic. COVID-19 is not the cause of these structural budget deficits, which have been with us for years, but it is an accelerant that has exacerbated the situation. And that leads us to the second question. How can William & Mary Athletics achieve budget stability, addressing the structural deficits exacerbated by COVID-19? There are a few levers that we might consider as we go to address these, but there are also some that are unavailable. By state law, athletics must be self-supporting. It has to be athletic-specific revenues that are devoted to covering their expenses. We are among the highest student athletic fees in the Commonwealth and have no headroom to increase revenue through that mechanism. And we cannot use university unrestricted funds because those are already dedicated to mission-critical priorities, and those needs have increased with the pandemic as well. So what levers are available to us? We could reduce the number of games. We could reduce travel. We could take some personnel actions. We could launch fundraising initiatives, and we could try to increase sponsorships, all of which we've done. We also could have cut all sport budgets equally. We could have taken what is among the lowest student athlete support levels in the conference, and we could have made it even lower across the board. Most of you know that across the board cuts generally aren't actually strategic, and generally aren't strategic in their nature, and that's not what we chose to do. We did not choose to affect the sport budgets, so many of which are already below the median in the conference, and choose to affect them even further. That left us with two possible decisions and thinking that we needed to reduce student athlete participants and reduce sports sponsorship. You could do it temporarily. That actually causes a wider impact because you have to affect more sports because the less savings are actually realized. And you could potentially make the hardest decision of all, which is to discontinue sports on a permanent basis. If you make that choice, it yields more savings because you can limit the impact to a fewer number of sports, but it is a permanent impact. And you do have to recognize that you can also reclassify some of these sport programs to various levels, including club. Between April 1st and September 29th, 26 NCAA Division I institutions have made the decision to reduce sport programs. That's 94 total sport programs that have been affected across the country, and the institutions that have been forced to make these choices in this time range from Power 5 institutions in the Big Ten and in the Pac-12, as well as Ivy League schools. It runs the gamut of institutional type. If we consider program elimination by sports, among those 94 that have been recently eliminated, tennis is the most popular for men and women, followed by swimming and diving for both men and women. Track and field, cross country, and indoor track and field are among the more popular for men, but they run the gamut. There's a wide spectrum of programs that have been eliminated in this time. And this actually happens every year. The red bars in the graph before you represent sport programs that were reduced in a given year. The blue columns represent sport programs that were added, and the black line represents in a given year whether there was a net gain or loss in total sports sponsorship. As you can see, most years have actually been gainful years in which more sports were added, but there have been a few years like 88, 89, and 2002, 2003 in which more sports programs were eliminated than added. Based on the fact that we're already at 94 programs eliminated in the current year, it's looking like this year will be closer to that 88, 89 example in which more programs go away than are added in a given year. William and Mary has also addressed our sports sponsorship over time. In 1984, sports were proposed for elimination, and in 1985, action was taken. In 1991, sports were proposed for elimination, and in 1995, action was taken. In 2011, we eliminated diving because of the lack of a diving well in the aquatics facility. In 2021, we made the decision that we also need to take action on sports sponsorship again. We should also make these actions in light of national trends. On the vertical axis on the graph before you is the change in sports sponsorship by Division I institutions since 1989, so from 1989 to 2018. And the horizontal axis represents the percentage of Division I institutions that sponsor a sport. So if a sport finds itself in the bottom left corner, that generally means that it's been seeing reduced sponsorship and an increasingly small percentage of NCAA Division I institutions offer the sport. And this is restricted to simply to programs that William & Mary sponsors as we consider the national landscape as well. And so if you're willing to have a conversation that engages the reality that we likely need to eliminate sports in this time, or that we do need to eliminate sports in this time, you have to consider legal requirements. It's helpful to look at a case study. Eastern Michigan is among the most recent. It's certainly not the most exhaustive. It's certainly not an exhaustive case study that we'll do, but want to take a look at Eastern Michigan, which in March 2018, citing budget deficits, decided that it needed to eliminate sport programs. It decided to eliminate 2 men's and 2 women's programs and announced those decisions based on budget deficits. In September, there was a preliminary injunction that stopped the discontinuation of the women's sports, saying that Title IX was not excused by financial difficulty. In November of 2018, Eastern Michigan said it would reinstate women's tennis, and in February 2019, a court announced that Eastern Michigan lost in court and was told that it had to reinstate softball as well. In January 2020, Eastern Michigan reached a negotiated settlement in which they agreed to pay each of the plaintiffs $125,000, cover their legal expenses, and agree to 4 things, at least 4 things. One of which was to achieve substantial proportionality by 2023 with no more than a 1.8 percentage point gap between the composition of its student body and its student athletes. It announced that it would use roster management as one portion of how it would achieve substantial proportionality. And it said it would sponsor women's tennis on an ongoing basis as well as add women's lacrosse to its sports sponsorship. And it agreed to invest $2 million more in women's sports over the next 3 years. Title IX has 3 mechanisms by which an institution might be in compliance. The third is a demonstrated accommodation of the underrepresented sex. It means that you are either doing surveys or have some reason to believe that you are meeting your student body's interest. The second is a history of adding opportunities for the underrepresented sex. And substantial proportionality, which is what we just discussed, the notion of having a student athlete body that's reflective of the composition of the general undergraduate body, is the first prong with which you might comply. Gender equity in athletics does not mean parity, a 50-50 relationship of men and women. It means equity. So the notion that the student body composition should dictate what the composition of student athletes is. And there are some other aspects to complying with Title IX as well that we will focus on this evening. The courts have said that substantial proportionality is a safe harbor. And if an institution is making the incredibly difficult decision to discontinue sports, it needs to achieve the safe harbor of substantial proportionality, or you incur significant legal and financial risk. Like institutions nationwide and mirroring national trends, William & Mary student body is now roughly 58% women, which means that our student athletes also need to be proportionate to that. So the third frame of the problem that one has to ask is, does the solution meet the legal requirements of Title IX? I simply want to pause on this and note, Title IX is the right thing to do. I'm not looking to cast any blame on it, but we simply need to be aware that it's a public record that William & Mary's compliance with Title IX will be under scrutiny as we move into the next year. So if we're going to talk about potential solutions and what we might do going forward, we have to look within those three frames. And what William & Mary announced on September 3rd was that its athletic sports sponsorship would, for the first time, fit within those three frames. It would facilitate Title IX compliance, it would provide ongoing budget stability, and it would align with a Division I identity competing at scholarship level athletics. And it's a comprehensive solution. So when you take those three frames, I understand that the most common thing that we hear is, I want to talk about this one piece of the solution and focus on it and that individual aspect. It has to be a comprehensive solution for the entire department. It's not a sport-specific issue. It's a comprehensive solution that we have to address for the university and the entirety of William & Mary Athletics. There are options that we can consider together. But any solution that we bring forward as a viable scenario has to ensure that it meets those three frames. So if an affected sport would like to be reinstated, it has to be able to do so with Title IX compliance, with providing ongoing budget stability, not in the near term, ongoing long-term budget stability. And it has to do so within a Division I identity. The Division I identity frame is the most flexible. We've been offering non-scholarship athletics competing against scholarship opponents for some time now. In general, those programs began as scholarship programs. They had some scholarships available, and over time those have eroded and for several teams gone away. We also have to provide the ongoing budget stability, knowing that we can't do this for just 1 year. This has to be a point at which we provide this in an ongoing means to address the structural budget issues that we've known about for some time. And it does have to be Title IX compliant, independent of the decisions we made in 2021 that will facilitate that compliance for the institution as a whole. Those are the three frames that we have to work through as we consider whether or not we can approach solutions together. Is it Title IX compliant? Will it provide ongoing budget stability? And will it be a budget that's capable of offering a competitive opportunity at the Division I level? In recent weeks, I've spoken with more than 100 families and callers. And that's how I've come to frame the problem through those conversations. I hope that was clarifying. We need to be clear with one another. The challenges we face are real. Difficult decisions are required in this time. Our goal is to engage in meaningful dialogue and to bring an entrepreneurial mindset to the problem solving required. To those who are ready to bring substantive solutions that we may not have thought about in a way that's respectful of the challenges we have to solve, we are very open to that. We're eager for that. Some have described the recent news about these 7 sports teams as William & Mary, quote, losing its soul, end quote. This sentiment mistakes that which embodies the spirit of William & Mary for the soul of the university itself. The soul of William & Mary is alive and well, quite strong in fact, as strong as it was in 1693 and as strong as it was in 1893 when we competed in our first intercollegiate athletics contest. It will be that strong in 2020 and beyond. In speaking with student athletes and coaches, the understanding that point has never been more necessary. We find ourselves in circumstances in which some tension is natural among programs. And speaking for a moment directly to our current student athletes, it's essential that we remember, whether you don a cap and goggles or a helmet and shoulder pads, whether you lace up cleats, spikes, or sneakers, whether you use a racket or a stick, whether you score points, goals, or runs, or measure your feats in time or distance, whether you're the first in your family to attend college or a multi-generational legacy, you are a William & Mary student, and you have earned your place at this university. My commitment to our student athletes has been that I will walk with them throughout this year, even as we do not know entirely what the outcome will be. I will be at practices and hopefully games and meet if we're able this spring, which we so look forward to doing if we're able. We will engage this problem head on. We will face it with curiosity. We will pursue creative solutions, and we will answer the call to pursue excellence with integrity. We will respect one another in conflict. In short, we'll be William and Mary in this moment. We've received many questions from the community, and in reading them all, I've tried to address some this evening, but I too have questions. I'm going to take time to find the answers before hosting future public sessions. We know there's much more ground to cover, and we will be holding these sessions in October to engage the community in problem solving. Decisions are as final as the circumstances in which they are made. This evening, I attempted to clearly frame the problem facing us: a Division I institutional identity, budget stability, and Title IX compliance. We'll be working with the Tribe Club Board as we seek viable scenarios, meeting all three of those frames to pursue that would meaningfully change the circumstances and introduce the possibility that the outcome might change for a sport. As for immediate next steps, I've begun meeting with student athletes and coaches from the affected teams and Student Athlete Advisory Council members. Next week, we're engaging the Tribe Club and faculty representatives to review financial data that we'll then share with the broader community the following week. And in addition, throughout this time, this next 2 weeks, I'll continue meeting with members of the William & Mary Foundation, the Tribe Club, and representatives from individual sports. As I said earlier, my door remains open and my ears open to all who genuinely want to address how we move William & Mary forward. Thank you for your time and attention. Good night.